shrimp in lobster cream sauce today on Dinner at Joe's. Welcome back to Dinner at Joe's. I'd like to clarify something about the last episode of Dinner at Joe's. By accident, I used the intro from In Joe's Kitchen and the outro from In Joe's Kitchen, but it was technically an episode of Dinner at Joe's. I just wanted to clarify that. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be making shrimp in lobster cream sauce. The first thing we need to talk about is our shrimp. These are the shrimp that we're going to be using, and some of them are white shrimp or white prawns, and about half of them are black tiger prawns or tiger shrimp. And you want large shrimp for this. I believe these are the 1620s. I think I'm not 100% on the numbers here. That's what we have here, and what I have done is I've taken the shrimp and I've taken all the shell off, and then I carefully pulled off the first section of shell, leaving the tail flap attached. And then to pull out the vein, and I wear gloves when I do this, disposable gloves. You just pinch it and you pull it out, and it comes out very simply. That's what I have here. I have 11 shrimp here. You're going to want 12 shrimp for this recipe. And I have saved all the shrimp shells. I also have a few extra shrimp shells from another preparation that I saved. We're going to make simple shrimp stock. And the secret to this simple shrimp stock, I'm not going to be making what you might have seen as brandied shrimp stock. That is got more ingredients. Since we're using brandy in our recipe, there's no need to put it into this recipe. I'm going to be using fish stock as our liquid ingredient. To bolster that and to boost the flavor, we're also going to be using some bottled clam juice. And what that's going to do is perk up the flavor. If we used all fish stock, it would be very one-noted. This is going to add some salinity and nice briny sea flavor. This recipe came about a year and a half ago. And I was asking myself a question. What do I do with semi-condensed lobster bisque? I had a bunch of cans. And I thought to myself, What if I use it to make a sauce? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to use this can to make a sauce. We'll set that can to the side. We're going to start with our shrimp stock. And I have the shrimp shells. I also have some mirepoix. I have about a half of a cup of onion. I have about 3 tablespoons of onion, 3 tablespoons of carrot. And we also have a big bouquet garni of some parsley sprigs, 2 bay leaves, and a couple sprigs of thyme. I'm also going to put in there a few peppercorns, right from my pepper mill. And that's going to be our mirepoix and our bouquet garni. We're going to start this process. We're going to heat up our pan here, and we're going to start with, I'm using a Chartreuse Hevesi, which is a splayed saute pan, but a deep saucepan would do fine. We're going to put in some clarified butter. It's a little solidified here. We're going to put about a tablespoon is enough in here. Okay. And we're going to let it melt. And you will know that the clarified butter is ready to cook in when you see the veils. What they call ripples or smiling. And you'll also smell it too. I can see it now, so we're going to dump in our shells. We're also going to add in our onions, and our carrots and our celery. All of our mirepoix in here. And we're going to cook this until the shrimp turn a beautiful rosy pink color. You don't want to overcook the shrimp shells because then the flavors will be too strong and you'll pull out unwanted flavors from the shells. So what you want to do is cook these until they're a rosy pink color. We're also going to put in here a half of a cup of dry white wine. I like dry vermouth myself, but a dry white wine like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio or a Chablis would be fine in this instance. The shells are almost done here. Just keep them moving so that you don't over-color the shells. And this is an easy and wonderful shrimp stock that's great for many things. In a future episode, we're going to make the risotto with seafood. Risotto tutto mare. And we'll use this same shrimp stock recipe as our base flavor. That'll be somewhere in the future. Now all of this is colored, so I'm going to toss in my aromatics here. And we're going to deglaze with our white wine. We're going to let the white wine cook down by half before we add our fish stock and our clam juice. Okay. It's important that the wine reduces so that you get a concentration of the acidity. Now we'll grab our fish stock and our clam juice. Next, we're going to pour in our clam juice. One whole bottle is about 8 ounces worth. And our can of fish stock, which is about 14.5 ounces. You could also use the same quantity of fish stock from a box. This is going to make a little extra stock than what we're going to need for our recipe. So that can just be saved and used for another process. Makes a nice little soup. Use it to steam off clams or mussels. Lovely stuff. Now we need to bring this to a full boil. And then we're going to drop it to a simmer. And it's going to simmer for half an hour. And once this drops to a simmer, once we drop it to a simmer, it's going to simmer for half an hour. And because it's shellfish shells, it does not need to cook for a very long time. Especially these shrimp shells, you don't want to pull out those strong flavors. And as you can see, we've added no salt in here. Our bottled clam juice has the salt that we need for right now. You don't want to overly salt this recipe. Okay. You could also, with this recipe, use the Argentine red shrimp. But the Argentine red shrimp, they have a stronger flavor. I prefer the white shrimp, or ideally you want the black tiger shrimp, are the best. Those are the best shrimp. And what I said was you want the largest shrimp possible. If you can get larger shrimp than this, you're just going to use less shrimp per person, because we're going to use about 6 shrimp per person. But if you use larger shrimp, you can use less per person. The larger shrimp's going to take a little longer to cook. And then once this stock has cooked for half an hour, we're going to strain it through a sieve. There is no need to use a chinois with a stock like this, being that there's no real fine particles. If your stock has real fine particles, then you're going to want to strain it. If you're making a stock that's got real fine particles, you want to strain it through a chinois, but just a sieve or a china cap is fine for straining this sauce. While this comes up to temperature, we're going to talk about our other ingredients here today. Going to be using some shallots. This is some tomato paste, which we're going to prepare right now. Just going to put 2 tablespoons of white wine on. This is roasted tomato paste. The recipe for the roasted tomato paste can be found on the In Joe's Kitchen cooking series and the Mardi Gras Fat Tuesday special, where the tomato paste is roasted in whole butter. And what happens is the flavor deepens and the color darkens, and it gives it more character. And I'm going to mix it with 2 tablespoons of white wine. Going to put another tablespoon in there, half tablespoon actually, so that it's fully dissolved. And this is going to contribute some color along with the other ingredient here, which is some paprika, which we're also going to use in the sauce. Our stock is now boiling. So I'm going to turn it down to a low simmer, and this is going to simmer for half an hour. In half an hour's time, that's when we're going to strain it. The main flavoring in this sauce along with the lobster bisque from a can, is this product right here. Brandy. I'm going to be using 4 tablespoons of brandy. I've also got an extra teaspoon in here, which we're going to reserve for the end of the recipe. The other flavoring in this recipe is cream sherry. This is cream sherry. This is the Harvey's Bristol cream sherry. It's lovely stuff. It's one of the other main flavorings in this recipe. And for brandy, you don't need to use, if you want to use cognac, that's fine, but any good cheap brandy does the trick. We're also going to be using salt and freshly ground black pepper and heavy cream. If you can't find semi-condensed lobster bisque, you could use ready-to-serve lobster bisque, also from a can. With the ready-to-serve lobster bisque, it requires less. You can use less. You'll be able to use less cream when you use the semi-condensed lobster. When you use the non-condensed ready-to-serve lobster bisque. So we're going to come back in half an hour and proceed with our recipe. Welcome back to Dinner at Joe's. This is our shrimp stock. It has been strained, and I have a cup of it here we're going to use in our recipe here, and that's for 2 servings. I still have close to a cup left over, which we're going to reserve for use down the road. This is our semi-condensed lobster bisque, and these are all of our ingredients that we're going to proceed with. First thing we're going to do is we're going to heat up our pan first with some clarified butter, because we are going to first sear the shrimp. Put about a tablespoon in here. Fine. And I'm going to season the shrimp with some salt. Okay, and we're going to sear the shrimp first. We're going to sear them quickly on both sides. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute on each side. And I've got a large deep saute pan because we're going to build the sauce in here. And then when the sauce is done, we're going to finish the cooking of the shrimp in the sauce. We want to wait till this is really hot. The oil needs to be really rippling, and you're going to smell the clarified butter. Not yet, okay. You don't need a lot of butter for this clarified butter in this part of the recipe. There's no point. Just a little bit just to get nice sear on these. Nope. It's got to be really hot. That's the goal when you're doing a sear. Because if you just throw the shrimp in here without heating the pan, they're going to steam. We want to get some color and some seared flavor on them before we proceed. We're then going to remove them back to this plate. Okay. Now we can proceed. We're going to put them all in here at one time. It's important, if you're doing more, to do it in stages, because you don't want to sear. If if you try and sear all the shrimp at one time, if you're doing a double or triple recipe, you're not going to be able to fit them all into the pan. So we're going to proceed here with all of these. The goal here is just to get them seared. We're not cooking them at this point, just to get a sear on them, which contributes to the good flavor. And you get a little fond in the bottom of the pan. It's important not to let them cook all the way through. Because if they cook all the way through, then you'll have problems, because they will be technically over. Now we're going to flip them over in the order which they went into our pan here. Now we can start yanking them here. Okay, that's all the seared shrimp. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pour off the, I'm going to scrape out the nasty used clarified butter here, which we do not need because it's, the fond is fine in the pot, yes, but we don't need the clarified, that used clarified butter in here. Then we'll turn the pan back on high heat. We're going to add in some fresh clarified butter. About another tablespoonful. Okay, that's fine. We're going to add our shallots at this point. And we're going to let the shallots sweat. It's very important, this part of the recipe, that the shallots are sweated and not sauteed. You don't want to get any color on the shallots. If you get color on the shallots, you'll have problems. They're cut very finely, so it's important. Now we're going to do the flambe step. We're going to slide the pan off the heat, and we're going to take our brandy, reserving about a teaspoon of it. Tilt the pan, and then that causes the flambe. And then continue to move the pan, allowing all the, now that all of it has dissipated, we're going to add in our paprika and our tomato. Scrape it all in. This is our tomato paste that we did process, and then give it a stir. Okay. Now we can add in our stock. Put it all in. which is our cup of our shrimp stock here. Got a nice color. We're also going to take our canned lobster bisque, which we can add in now. Whole can. Okay. Use a little whisk here. Whisk it in. Now this needs to simmer for a few minutes. We're going to bring it up to a boil and let it simmer for 5 minutes before we proceed and add cream. We're going to season it at this point with salt, freshly ground black pepper, okay. Bring this to a boil. This is very flavorful, as you can see. And I have my reserved teaspoon of oil here. We're also going to put in at this point, once it hits a boil and we add cream, once it cooks a little bit, we're going to add some of our sherry, which we have here. I have a tablespoon of sherry plus an extra teaspoonful for the end. I'm going to put a teaspoon of sherry in with my cognac, which we're going to put in at the end. The rest of the sherry we're going to stir in. Now that it's boiling, we can stir it in. And that is an important flavoring, as is the brandy. You could try and substitute de-alcoholized or alcohol-free wine if you can't use brandy or sherry, but the flavor is not going to be the same. I'm going to give it a little taste at this point. It's going to need a little more salt, because when we do add cream, that's going to mute the seasoning, the seasoned taste. But it's delicious. I'm also going to put in a little more pepper as well. It's going to be simmer for 5 minutes. And then we're going to add cream with a little more pepper. Today I'm going to use some rice pilaf recipe, which can be found on the Well-Equipped Kitchen cooking series on the 2nd episode, the Useful Saucepan episode. You learn how to make rice pilaf. That's what I'm going to be using here, but you could also use noodles, or you could use pasta. You could pull all the shrimp out and throw some linguine in here, and it'd be delicious. Last little bit, 2 drops of sherry that are remaining in there. Okay. This sauce we're not going to strain, because there are tiny little bits of minced lobster in here from the lobster bisque, so we don't need to strain it. And we're probably going to put maybe about a cup of cream in here. It could be less cream if you're using ready-to-serve lobster bisque, or we're using the semi-condensed, so we're going to put more cream in here. Okay. I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit so that it reduces a little more. And we'll come back in 2 minutes, in 2 to 3 minutes when it's finished reducing. Welcome back to Dinner at Joe's and our beautiful Lobster sauce has been cooking down here. And I've turned the heat back up to high. Now we're going to add cream. We're going to whisk in about a cup's worth of cream. Cup and a quarter of cream. It's a beautiful pink color. Pink orange. Now we're going to need to taste this. A little more salt, because we did put cream in here. This has to come to a full boil, and it's going to reduce down just a bit before we add the shrimp. It's a beautiful color. It's going to be a nice creamy consistency. It's important that this reduces. It's an important step in this process. You need to concentrate the flavors and thicken it slightly. We didn't put any thickener or any starch of any kind. There's no thickener in this. We're just going to get the natural thickening from the cream. Which is not going to be a lot of thickening. It'll just be nice and clingy and lumpy. It would be too floppy if you put any sort of starch in here. So I don't recommend you putting any type of slurry in here. At this point, we're going to put our last dose, our remaining teaspoon of brandy and teaspoon of sherry. Give it a stir. And the raw flavor of those two ingredients is important. Just a little perkiness. We're not putting any lemon juice in here because there is dairy in here. We don't want to break the sauce. Give it one final taste before we commit to our shrimp. It's lovely and rich. Got a wonderful flavor. It's a nice delicate taste. I'm going to let it cook down a little bit before we put the shrimp in here, because it wants to be, you want sort of a nappe, and we can describe that here. This is what they call nappe, where it leaves a trail when you run your finger through. I'm using the thing so I don't touch it. Because the goal here is to have the sauce nice and at its perfect consistency. Then we're going to drop it to the low simmer where we're going to finish the shrimp. It'll take about 4 minutes to finish cooking and heat all the way through. Okay, we are almost there. Now we're going to lower this heat down to as low as we can get our heat to go here, because you don't want to overcook your shrimp. At a low simmer, we're going to start adding back the shrimp. And then we'll use a spoon and spoon sauce over them. I'm going to boost the heat just a hair. And I'll slide this stuff out of the way here. Right out of the way here. And what I have here is some rice pilaf. Like before in the previous episode, we have I've taken the rice pilaf and I put the hot rice pilaf into a bouillon cup, 8-ounce bouillon cup that I buttered. Just giving these shrimp a turn here so that they cook very evenly here. There we go. And when we do the plating here, we're actually going to start with the shrimp. We're going to start with some sauce around the bottom of the plate. Then we're going to lay out our shrimp, and then we'll pull our bouillon cup off. And I buttered the bouillon cup. That's important. Then packed it full with rice pilaf, which is a very important step. You could also use pan coating if you like, but pan coating has no flavor. You could even use whole butter. Soft butter would be fine too. It's just to lubricate. Okay. These are almost done. You don't want to overcook them, that's why the heat is very low. If they become overcooked, they will turn rubbery and unpleasant to eat. So we're going to turn them one final time just to even out the cooking process here. That one broke in half, but it's all good. Turn them once more. And I'm going to turn the heat off now. They are done. I'm just going to turn them one final time here. Okay. So now we can start the plating process here. So we're going to begin with sauce. With a little bit of the sauce. And be very careful when doing this. We will wipe our plate afterwards. We put some sauce down. Now we'll proceed and start laying out the shrimp. You want 6 per order. It could be more shrimp if you like. You could do more shrimp if you're hungry people and serve more per order. But I think 6 is a good portion. You're more than welcome to eat half seconds. It's 3, 4, 5, and here comes number 6. Clean up our plate here. That's very important because you eat with your eyes. And so now we're going to put some more sauce on the plate. Okay. And that's how beautiful it is. And now here's the secret, folks. The cup is going to be hot. Just remove the cup. And I like to leave it like this. You could sprinkle some chopped parsley on it, but I like to leave it on this. Leave it like this because of how it looks. Just because it looks so beautiful.